Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Friday Plant Consciousness live stream. How are you? How has your week been? My week has been, how shall I say, intense in a good way. I have a beautiful group of people here. We have 14 people that have come to visit Dom and her, and such a rich program that we put together for them. And it's been awesome. It's been exhausting and yet so much fun. And today I took them out into this giant prairie, and we had this deep connection and communication with the plants and all the other beings of this land. And look, if you've never been to Dom and her, you have to come, because it's this unique experience that is impossible to explain in any which way. So tomorrow we're going to be heading into the Sacred Woods Temple, and we're going to spend the whole day in there. I've got some great activities that are based on my research for them to experience. And, it's going to be fun. It's going to be great. See, aren't you jealous that you're not here? Like, you wish you were here. Trust me, you do. Especially today. It was a beautiful, gorgeous day with the sun out and such. So, but now I am here with you. And I was looking at, I have to say, I have to do another round of all my papers, because we're heading into the 2000s and like 10,000s and 20s now, which is really exciting. Today, we're not going to be doing an actual paper. We're going to be doing an article. And this article is by one of my new favorite authors and researchers, Natasha Myers. You might have remembered that we had already done one paper by Natasha. I'm going to drink some water. You can tell I've been talking a lot this week. And yes, I talk a lot always, but this has been a little bit more than usual. All right. So we are going to be going into an article that was written by Natasha Myers in January of 2021 that I just loved this article. And I thought it would be really interesting to share it with, to talk about it, because there's a lot of points she makes. So as you see from the title, the actual full title of the article is How to Grow Livable Worlds. I already love the fact that the word worlds is plural. 10 not so easy, she makes it in parentheses, I'll put it in little air quotes, 10 not so easy steps for life in the Planthropocene. So Planthropocene is a word that she coined. She is an anthropologist, and she started with planthropologist. And so she has used this term. I am so loving it. I'm like, I actually reached out to her. I'm like, what do I need to do in order to be called a planthropologist? I am not a accredited or studied anthropologist, but I feel like what I do is planthropology. And the funny part about it is that before that, so actually I should back up. A few days before I ever reached out to her, I started to think, I woke up one morning and I was thinking about this word, planthropology. I was like, wow, is that what I am? A planthropologist? Because I have gone through so many titles, as you know, and we've had these big discussions. Certified life coach will stay, as you have seen in my previous video on my podcast episode about my title and why I chose certified life coach and why life coach is so important to me. The nature inspired mentorship I also love. And then I have, the world ambassador for plant advocacy, which is something that was given to me by someone, and that has kind of been reinforced and stuck for several years now. But planthropologist, doesn't that sound like me? I mean, seriously, planthropologist is like the most perfect definition of me ever. So I woke up one morning thinking, planthropology, like, I wonder if that word exists. And I went and I typed it in, you did your little Google search or coziest church. And only thing that came up was Natasha Myers. And I found it super synchronic because we had just read not that long before her paper on plant sensing. And so I quickly went and devoured everything she's written about planthropology, and then reached out to her. And I was like, what do I need to do in order to become a planthropologist? And she actually responded to me, which I think I've mentioned before. And she right now is on a leave of absence from her work at the university. And so as soon as she gets back in June, she and I are going to have a conversation. So who Who knows? I might become an official planthropologist. We shall see. Either way, I think the term is awesome and that it totally fits in for who I am and what I do. And this article is super interesting about what it means to actually live in the Planthropocene. We've talked a lot about the Anthropocene. We've also talked about Ecozoic. And if you remember when we did the reviews on the Ecozoic, when we did those reviews, one of the comments that came out was the fact that focusing on Anthropocene is really focusing on the negative, is really focusing on what we consider to be some of the problems in this space. And that's definitely not very useful, where instead it would be much more interesting for us to think about terminology that takes us into a more positive view. Hence why there was the entire term connected to to Ecozoic, and to think of ourselves as going into an Ecozoic era. I don't know. Michelle says that I should think about ethnobotanist. Ethnobotanist is okay, but it's not. I like the idea of planthropology better, because planthropology is literally puts, first of all, plants in the beginning, like really focused, and how the human-plant interaction really takes place. And the human-plant interaction, not from the perspective of, I always think about botanical as in plants down there. I don't know why, that's the imagery that comes into my head. I think because most botanists are really focused on plants by kind of like species identification and dissection of plants and all that type of aspects, where I think that planthropology to me speaks more about the human-plant connection. But that's just me. And I don't know. I'm going to talk to Natasha and see more about where she goes. So these are kind of like some of the different areas that my mind has been going into. So without further ado, as usual, let me share my screen. Actually, I'm going to take a note here. We're going to talk about Ecozoic. We talked about for a second. Plant sensing. I'm writing myself a note because what happens is after I finish these, you know, as you've noticed, I post the recording as well as I post the recording, plus I post some show notes. You can tell I was just working on my podcast. I post some notes about, you know, what it is that I talked about and things like that. And invariably, I forget what I talk about. When I get so caught up in the feelings and the experiences that I kind of forget the words. So I'm trying to get better about taking some notes to help me in writing up my notes afterwards and make it a little easier for me to explain this to you, what we're doing. So, and by the way, remember, you know, if you're watching this, whether you're watching this live in the Naturally Conscious community, or you're watching this afterwards in NCC or on YouTube, please feel free to invite others. We do this every single Friday, and feel free to leave your comments and your thoughts. I really want this to be a discussion. I'd love to hear what your thoughts on all these papers are, and also thoughts on what direction we should take with the papers going forward. So, without further ado, let's share this and let's get into what we're going to talk about. All right. Echo, here's our paper. Oops, hold on. I meant to do this. I want to make this as big as possible so that we can really read the words. Oops. Why did it get smaller? Okay, I think that's better. Okay, so this is a paper in ABC. It's actually an Australian publication called, and then so it looks like it's ABC in Australia, and this is the religion and ethics section, which I found it an interesting location for it to be in, religion and ethics. And this is an opinion piece, completely an opinion by Natasha Myers. Like I said, it was posted in January of 2021, and it's How to Grow Livable Worlds, 10 Not So Easy Steps for Life in the Planthropocene. I'm curious. So I'm going to kind of pre-warn, one of the things that I'm curious and that I really want to hear from you about is that I'm wondering if she wrote Not So Easy for the general public. I am super curious as to whether or not this is going to be easy or hard for us in the naturally conscious community, us sprouts, us more, you know, plant aware people. Or is this not so easy if you're living in plant blindness? Or is it just not so easy no matter what? I mean, you know how I have this, We talk about this all the time about how some of the conversation pieces, some of the awarenesses that come up as we work more with plants, honestly are hard. They're not easy. They are complicated because they change the entire paradigm with which we're working with. So in changing that paradigm, does this mean that this actually becomes hard for everyone, that it's just something that we need to think about? And yeah, I mean, I agree with what Michelle's writing here in the comments, that she's saying, you know, maybe she wants people to think about the concepts a little deeper. And I do think so. I think she is trying to say there is no easy fix. And yet at the same time, there are 10 steps that we can take. So why not look at them? And also, I think people like to be challenged. So by saying it's not so easy, maybe that'll actually challenge them to think about it a little harder, and maybe it will be easier. Okay, so let's get into it. What follows are excerpts from a project I'm calling Rooting in the Planthroposcene, taking the impossible and near comedic form of a step-by-step guide to getting out of the Anthropocene. This project picks up recent calls from inventive forms of speculative fabulation. This form does well to channel both my rage and, oh, I forgot about this because I actually read through this once a long time ago when I was prepping. And actually, before I was prepping, when I decided to add it to our list. And she's pissed, by the way. She's way pissed, like way pissed, like really, really pissed in this article, just so you know. And this comes out. So just so you know, there will be pissed offness there. And I appreciate her for writing it in her pissed off stage. This form does well to channel both my rage about our current predicament and my playful and loving, if also serious, aspirations for dreaming worlds otherwise. Just to prepare you for what follows, there is not so much a research paper as it is an incantation. And there is definitely snark in here. There's definitely snark. We have to remember that we are living under a spell. And this is something that Robert McFarlane talks about in both its positive as well as its negative connotations. We have given ourselves a spell. We are living under a conditioned narrative that we keep creating. And for some people, it is a narrative of fear. And for others, it's a narrative of like, la, 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 nothing is happening. So I like that she's even kind of bringing all of these things to the surface. We are living under a spell, and this spell is destroying our worlds. It's time to cast another spell, to call other worlds into being, to conjure other worlds within this world. It is clear that the situation we find ourselves in now leaves us at the limits of language. Isn't that something that we sprouts talk about all the time? We are at the limits of, as I'm prepping right now, the podcast episode that's going to come out, which is about co-authorship with plants with Sydney Kale, which was an awesome conversation. Can't wait for you to listen to that podcast episode. But one of the things I love is that conversation we have about language and how she's working on this new development of language within the context of the human language that we already have. It's fascinating. And I do think we are, for all of us that are pushing the envelope, that are really plant human focused and relationship focused, our language is just ridiculously limited. It doesn't allow so much of this to unfold as cleanly or as clearly as it should. And I am glad for all of us that are pushing the limits and coining new terms and really bringing emotion into the more literal world. And grasping at the edges of imagination. We need art, experimental and radical disruption to learn other ways to see, feel, and know. I mean, seriously, do you now understand why I love Natasha Myers? I mean, she's just speaking my language. She's speaking my language. Consider this an invitation to experiment with ways of dreaming life differently. Step 1, never forget this. We are not one. How opposite from what we normally think, huh? Say it again and again. We cannot forget to keep asking precisely who is hailed by this anthropos. That is that figure positioned at the helm of the Anthropocene. Anthropocentric rhetoric calls out man as the agent of his own demise and simultaneously vaults him into position as the only viable savior of the planet. We got ourselves into this mess. We alone can get us out. Even as anthropocentric thinking attempts to call our attention to and finally hold us accountable for the egregious effects of our actions, it still figures humans as the singular agent transcendent over and separate from some Edenic nature in peril. These narratives recenter rather than decenter man as the agent with natural dominion over this planet's future. I mean, can you agree with that statement? Hello? Yes, of course. Do not get distracted by this misplaced. I love it. Michelle writes, plants don't care about our egos. No, but humans care about our egos. Yeah. Anyway, plants, seriously, plants do not get distracted by the misplaced concreteness of scientific efforts to articulate the physical markers and temporal boundaries of a geological era made by humans. What we are witnessing is the apotheosis of 500 years of colonial violence, extractive capitalism, white supremacy, and the hubris of human exceptionalism. A few buzzwords right there. The capitalism, which I think is even better than the Anthropocene, and the Plantationocene, because she's not talking about plants in this case, she's talking about Plantationocene, are apt monikers to identify the forces that have long been at work terraforming the planet. These destructive forces are propelled not by all people, but by those particularly egregious ways of doing life modeled on self-aggrandizing men. Remember this, not all are hailed by this figure or form of life. Capitalism and colonialism are not to be mistaken as natural or innate to human existence. They are not inevitable consequences of human evolution or civilization. As those of you that are reading Biocivilization, our book in our Plant Wisdom Book Club, clearly understand now that civilization is not exactly what we think it is. But they are the condition of our current predicament. Marisol de la Cadena calls our attention to those Anthropocene, those whose lives and lands continue to be spent in the accumulation of wealth by colonial and neocolonial powers. These are the people who remain targets of dispossession and attempted annihilation, even, perhaps especially today, as capitalism gets into high gear in its efforts to go green and save the world. Don't believe the hype of sustainability rhetoric, which is why we use much more in NCC the word word regenerative. Seriously, I am struggling with sustainability because I feel like it's been commandeered. It was such a good word at one point, and then it got commandeered by all these forces that are really just using it in the same way. Like, oh no, let's keep destroying the Amazon, or let's keep cutting down trees around our houses because we can just put in giant machines that will capture all of the carbon from the air. Or, yeah, let's dredge up all of the earth under the sea, like all of that sand, in order to expand islands that shouldn't be there anyway. But because the way that our earth is transforming, those islands would naturally disappear. Seriously. The worlds built by colonialism and capitalism are unbelievable for us all. Hence, step 2. Break this world to make other worlds possible. There is no way to mitigate anthropocentric violence using anthropocentric logic. Aho! Isn't this what we talk about all the time in NCC, right? What do I say over and over and over again? We need to step out of our human logic by embracing our plant logic, by embracing even our animal logic, our nature spirit logic, our bacteria logic, our fungi logic. We need to step into all of those first to re-enter our humanness with an expanded view that truly helps us remember we are part of the all, rather than trying to only use the one logic we have been conditioned and have learned since birth, and probably many, many lives before that. Seriously. Refuse calls to design for the Anthropocene. Such designs are precisely the technological fixes that will keep us locked in the same rhythms of extraction and dispossession. Refuse to be lured into those climate change edutainment. I like that one. edutainment complexes, those gleaming glass, metal, and concrete infrastructures whose capital and labor-intensive designs exquisitely expose the ruse of sustainability as an aesthetic maneuver grounded in Edenic versions of nature. That is not the kind of green that will save us. I mean, come on, she's preaching to the choir right now. So far, this step, not so hard, at least not for us, right? Yes, there are apocalypses already ongoing all around us. The decimation of the boreal forest to extract bitumen or on stolen indigenous land in Canada is one such apocalypse. She's in Canada, by the way. But giving in to the apocalyptic thinking is itself a kind of exit strategy, an easy out. Ruin porn, including those all too compelling images of plants rupturing through abandoned buildings in Detroit and Chernobyl, thrives on this narrative of a world without us. The earth will be better off without people. So we are told, beware of such apocalyptic thinking. Anthropocentric thought catches you up in the thrall of apocalypse and sets us all to work, furtively dreaming the end of times. And this I found really interesting because I understand when people say the world is going to be fine without us. And that is absolutely true. But human beings have existed on this planet for over 200,000 years. Well, excuse me, Homo sapiens have been around for, hominids. We have an entire part of our evolution that is connected in here. What we need to learn how to do is adapt to the constantly changing conditions around us. This is not an exit strategy. We're not supposed to all just say, well, like somebody who actually is in my family said to me once, he's like, I'm an atheist, so I don't care. I'm going to live it up and do whatever the hell I want. And then when I die, the planet can go to hell for all I care. I mean, seriously. No, that's not the point. The point is, our mission is to become part of the collective, to embody our peace, which is a unique piece as human beings. We have a specific unique part of the overall game of life, but that's not at the expense of all other life. So this isn't about get out and get out of the way. This is about adapt with our changing conditions. This is about become a better part of the biosphere in which we live. This is about connection and union, not separation and exit. We must refuse what Donna Haraway calls the tragic detumescene of a narrative arc that is bent on pulling the entire planet towards unstoppable catastrophe. Do not be swayed into thinking that this is how it has to go down, as if apocalypse is precisely what will have been. What futures are we setting in motion with all our apocalyptic rhetoric? Resist the lure of apocalypse like your life depends on it. Yes, it's easier to dream the end of the world than the end of capitalism. Kind of true, right? It's easy to imagine one and a lot harder to imagine the other. But the only way, and I'm not even sure that we need the complete end of capitalism. Maybe I'm controversial myself in that. I just feel like we're taking everything to freaking extremes. Stop taking things to extremes. Like flow within the middle of it. And I'm sure it's going to be different. But the only way to thwart the momentum of the Anthropocene is to break capitalism and activate processes of decolonization. This I agree. Remember, you know how I am about it. I am a very big fan of the Tower card in every tarot deck, because the Tower card is the card where the status quo dissolves into pieces, and then from there we can build anew. We can totally build anew. Dismantle and then recreate. Sometimes it's the only thing we can do. So, and while it is clearly time to dismantle Anthropocene logic, there is no need to wait until the end of this world to begin to conjure livable ones. As Stuart McLean reminds us, there are as yet other worlds in this world, and there are as yet worlds to come. But which worlds will be livable, and what makes a livable world? Chaos theory? I like that. I love it. Chaos theory. Look, I could take that in so many different directions, especially because I had some good friends that practiced chaos magic, and that's connected. And so there's the scientific. Oh, don't get me started. All right, I'm focused. Step 3. Ready? Step 3. Repeat this mantra. Hello. We are not alone. We are not alone. We are not alone. Isn't that the ending that I come to at Reconnect with Plant Wisdom, with the Plant Kingdom, right? Reconnect with the Plant Kingdom is all at the very end. We are not alone. Remember, you are never alone. Even if you're sitting and there is no other human beings around you, you're never alone. Looking back at the past 500 years of effort to assert Western man's independence from and power over nature, it is clear that we should never be trusted to act alone. Anthropocene thinking is so obsessed with man's independence, with unilateral action and autonomy, that it forgets that there are other forces and powers among us, including those whose significantly better skills in the realm of world-making and planetary scale change. In some cases, these beings have billions of years more experience than us in terraforming livable worlds. How true is that, huh? Step 4. Name our most powerful ally. Who made this planet livable and breathable for animals like us? Say it out loud. The photosynthetic ones. The photosynthetic organisms form a biochemical force of a magnitude we have not yet properly grasped. More than 2 billion years ago, photosynthetic microbes spurred the event known today as the oxygen catastrophe, or the Great Oxidation. These creatures dramatically altered the composition of the atmosphere, choking out the ancient anaerobic ones with poisonous oxygen vapors. If we were to continue to fall into the trap of naming linear, time-bound eras after singular agents, we might be rattled to think that we are living in the wake of what should have been called the phytocene. The phytocene. I can deal with the phytocene. Photosynthesizers like cyanobacteria, algae, terrestrial plants, and trees are the planet's most powerful agents of elemental rearrangement. I just, come on, tell me the truth. Don't you just love the way she writes? Especially because you can really feel how pissed she is. I mean, you can feel how pissed she is in this. This was probably one of those, like, I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm contemplating everything, like especially because remember, she is a professor and in anthropology, she's like thinking about lectures and lessons and academics and everything. And she's just like, right? I could totally imagine her doing that. The science of photosynthesis, with its calculative metrics bent on extracting value from green beings, is too mired in the logic of naturalized capital. These green beings, I can't think, therefore I rant. Michelle Kirby. I love it. I love it. The science of photosynthesis, with its calculative metrics bent on extracting values from green beings, is too mired in the logic of naturalized capital. These green beings must be understood otherwise, that is, as practitioners of a kind of alchemical cosmic mattering. We think plants can't move, but they reach out across the cosmos, drawing the energy of the sun into their tissues so that they can work their terrestrial magic. Pulling matter out of thin air, plants must be understood as world-making conjurers. I just want to let you sit with that image for a second. Close your eyes for a second. Just close your eyes. Trust me. World-making conjurers. Seriously. Alchemical magic. They teach us the most nuanced lessons about matter and mattering. The most powerful, more powerful than any industrial plant, communities of photosynthetic creatures rearrange the elements on a planetary scale. They know how to compose livable, breathable, nourishing worlds. As they exhale, they compose the atmosphere. As they decompose, they matter the compost and feed the soil. Holding the earth down and the sky up, they sing in nearly audible ultrasonic frequencies. and even inaudible frequencies with the music of the plants, an instrument made just for them. Because, it's important to also say that they could do both. So they can be musicians as well as singers with their own ultrasonic frequencies. As they transpire, moving massive volumes of water from the depths of the earth up to the highest clouds. They cleanse the waters and nourish all other life. And for those caught up in the thrall of an economy that fetishes carbon, perhaps the most important art these creatures practice is sucking up, with gusto, the gaseous carbon emissions we humans generate so abundantly. To say that forests and marine microbes form the lungs of the earth is an understatement. They literally breathe us into being. All cultures turn around plants' metabolic rhythms. Plants are the substance, substrate, scaffolding, symbol, sign, and sustenance of political economies the world over. We must learn how to work with and for the plants. Conte per te. So that we can be nourished and clothed and sheltered and pleasured and healed without destroying the earth. Plants are the world makers we need to heed if we hope to grow livable worlds. And our world will only be livable worlds when people learn how to conspire with the plants. Remember, plants as mentors, plants as models, plants as measure. Seriously. Mentors, models, and measures. We could learn so much about this human body by being with plants. All right, step 5. Halfway there. Step 5. Foment plant people conspiracies to root into the Planthropocene. Repeat this again and again. We are of the plants. All right, come on. Maybe she came into the naturally conscious community and we just missed it, because seriously, we are plants. We are of the plants. Now, if this is true, then the figure that should ground our actions is not the self-aggrandizing anthropopos, so much as a strangely hybrid figure we could call the planthropos. So not the anthropos, but the planthropos. And now try wrapping your mouth around this word until it rolls off your tongue with ease. Planthropocene. Yes, it's awkward and you will sound silly, but just give it a try. I think it's beautiful. Planthropocene. The Planthropocene names as an aspirational episteme, not a time-bound era, one that invites us to stage new scenes and new ways to see and seed plant-people relations in the here and now, not some distant future. And it is grounded in the wisdom of the ancient and ongoing radical solidarity projects that plants have already cultivated with their many people. Rather than circumscribing the terrors we face now, the Planthropocene is an invitation to root ourselves into a way of doing life that would break the frame of the Anthropocene logic. The Planthropocene acknowledges the joint and uncertain futures of the plants and peoples that demand we change the terms of encounter so that we can become allies to these green beings. Anthropologist Tim Choi makes a powerful call for the formation of a conspiracy of breathers. His is an aspirational politics in which people learn how to conspire. That is, to breathe together in order to fight against the atmospheric effects of what Michelle Murphy calls industrial exuberance. He helps us to think conspiracy otherwise, not as a sinister association, but as the grounds for a livable politics. It is time to extend his call for a conspiracy of breathers to include the plants. That is, we need to learn not just how to collaborate, but how to conspire with plants, to breathe with them. Remember, they breathe us into being. Remember this, what is good for plants is good for everyone else. Get on their side, consider yourself at their service, get to know plants intimately and on their terms. I think that last one is the one that's kind of tricky for most people. I think there are a lot of gardeners that really, truly believe that, my seat just went down, who really believe that they love plants and that they are connected to plants, but in reality, they still ask. No, ask is a little too light. In the spirit of her, they push the plants into what they want. Not all gardeners, not all. There are always exceptions to the rules. I am just stating that there are many, especially ornate gardeners, that it's not so much about allowing the plant freedom to be, but constrain into being. Okay. And to be sure to tap into their desires for forms of life that are not for us, support their efforts to keep the earth cool and the waters cleansed, give plants and their soils space and time to flourish outside of the rhythms of capitalist extraction and the chemical violation of industrial agriculture. Remember, they need their pollinators, they need their fungal relationships, they need their animal allies. Is there such a thing as feral? Sorry, I was just reading a comment. Feral gardening is a thing? Ooh, I'm going to go look that term up. Hold on. Feral gardening. See, I love it when I have comments because comments show me new things. Plus, lets me know what you think about all this. Above all, every time I go down a little bit, this thing comes down. It drives me nuts. Above all, they need us to radically reconfigure how we stage our relationships with them. Indeed, if plants are sun worshipers, perhaps we ought to be plant worshipers. Right here, we've got a whole community. We're called sprouts, plant worshipers, sprouts. We worship plants, right? And we, at the same time, collaborate. We respect, we collaborate, we explore. Deplenia is trying to move into my curtains. It's not a nice place for you. I don't think you want to go there. We'll see. All right. I like the idea of being plant worshipers. A little reverence for the plants could go a long way. Invent rituals. We got them. Practice permaculture with the witches. I don't think we call it permaculture, but we kind of do. We're definitely witches. Definitely witches. Start a local church for plant worship. Hey, maybe NCC should be considered a registered church. What do you think? Would it work? Would it work? The naturally conscious church. I don't want to call it a church. I'm with community, but I get what you're saying. Don't worry. Reverence for plants doesn't mean you can't eat them, but it does mean it would be polite to thank them for their generosity. Just think, if you had to consult the plants to ask permission to use them, industrial agriculture, strip mining, clear cutting, and the expanding concrete of urban sprawl would be inconceivable. Just ask. They will tell you. I was just, as I was again prepping the next episode of the podcast, Sydney talks about this, about like, just ask and they will tell you. And for her, it was such a pleasant surprise, the things that the plants started to share with her as she started this co-creation and this co-authorship process. I've got a few shorts coming up. I'll make sure I publish them everywhere. Good point. Catholics do eat and drink the body of Christ. How did I not think about that before? We could worship plants and still eat and drink from. I like this thinking. This is interesting. All right, step six, ready? Disrupt colonial common sense. Decolonization means giving stolen lands back to indigenous peoples, and decolonization demands we reckon with and dismantle the overt and covert ways that settler states are structured on white supremacy, slavery, and the erasures of existing land-body relations through fantasies of terra nullius. Perhaps one step towards decolonization will require that we disrupt our all too colonial imaginations. To do this, we would need to upend everything we believe is common sense. Look, if you've ever heard, I just had this rant yesterday. This was my rant. The term common sense makes no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. Common sense is completely cultural and implies that you must have the exact same set of norms, rules, ethics, morals. And it's impossible because we were all taught differently. Common sense makes no sense. Therefore, so many things that we hold as common sense need to be dismantled because somewhere it's not common sense. So dismantle it and make a decision for yourself. Don't rely on common sense. Make a decision for yourself. Does talking to plants sound crazy to you? No, of course not. They are our friends. Consider this. For millennia and still to this day, people all over the world cultivate intimate relationships with plants. Here, me, we. Many have come to know plants' powers and predilections, especially those whose lives and livelihoods get them tangled up with the plants and caught in their spiraling whirl. There are gardeners, farmers, hunters, healers, herbalists, cooks, artists, naturalists, foresters, scientists, and shamans all over the world who consider plants as sentient beings worthy of address. Oh, that list is so much longer. Lots of people hear plants sing, though not necessarily in the audible registers you might anticipate. And at the same time, many people, perhaps even you, would think this absurd. Sure, you read that story about plants in your Facebook feed. Science has confirmed that plant roots have a kind of swarm intelligence. But we don't need the disenchanting sciences of plant sensing to tell us what plant people have long known. What we do need to do is make strange the disenchantment and skepticism we have inherited from those whose power was secured in part through sciences designed to invalidate all other ways of knowing the world. It was the colonizers, of course, who refused to believe local indigenous peoples' claims that the plants can sing. Oh, and don't forget that human exceptionalism is another colonial formation, one that violently evacuates the liveliness and sentience of the more than human world around us. It's time to detune our colonial sensorium. To do this, we need to upend everything we believed was common sense. I am aho to that. I am with that. To do this, we would need to, I just read that. Forget everything you thought you knew about the living world, especially what you believe is perceptible, imaginable, reasonable, legible, and meaningful. Refuse the disenchantments of a mechanistic science that renders more than human worlds in the form of alienable bits of life and death ready to be proportioned off as property, resource, or commodity. Sideline colonial and capitalist moral economies that dictate what is good, valuable, and true, especially those that naturalize economic growth and extraction as the work that is proper of men. Refuse to discipline or deride local and indigenous cosmologies, push back on every contortion or erasure or reduction of their knowledge that seeks to make such practices legible or commensurable or rational to science. Do not appropriate indigenous knowledges, but do the work to make yourself receptive and responsive so that you can take these knowledges seriously. Make space for other ways of knowing and storing the living world. Remember, there are people all over the world who have the protocols, the know-how, and the responsibility to consult the plants. Livable worlds need people who know how to talk to the plants. I would have slightly changed that sentence to be the talk with plants, not the plants or to, but with. Let's make dialogue. All right. Step 7, vegetalize your sensorium. I love this. I don't think most people would even understand what the phrase means when you first read it, but I just love it. Vegetalize your sensorium. Once you have set in motion efforts to decolonize your common sense, it is time to vegetalize your sensorium so that you too can learn with and alongside plants. As a co-conspirator supporting their world-making projects, you will need to apprentice with them. What do plants want? What do plants know? What can a plant do? We do not know. We do not yet know. But you could reach towards them with the openness of not knowing and forget what you thought counts as knowledge. Consider this. Your sensorium, especially your sense of color, texture, taste, touch, and smell, is already articulated by plant life. Their forms inspire your aesthetics, entertain your habitus, and excite your imagination. From this perspective, it is clear that your senses are already vegetalized, and yet there is still much work to learn. Wait, there is still much work to do and learn. I think there's an and missing there. How to extend your synesthetic sensorium to meet their lively worlds. In order to awaken the latent plant in you, or how would we say it? To reawaken your plantedness. You will need to get interested in the things that plants care about. Though plants don't have eyes, ears, noses, or mouths, don't be fooled. They can see, hear, smell, taste, and feel. Let their planty sensitivities inflect your own. Tune into the different ways they do time. Learn to follow their tempos and rhythms. Pay attention to the ways they defy all too human notions of individuality, bodily integrity, subjectivity, and agency. Let the plants refine what you mean by the terms sensing, sensitivity, and sentience. Let yourself be lured by their tropic turns, and you will soon acquire freshly vegetalized sensory dexterities. You can also attract the latent plant in you through incantations, hypnosis, meditation, or yoga, or really just tuning into your plantness. Seriously, it's there. It's there. It's within you. It's there. Try cultivating your inner plant through meditation. Vegetalization is possible because your body does not end at the skin. Your contours are not constrained by physical experience. Your morphological imagery is fluid and changeable. Indeed, your tissues can absorb all kinds of fantasies. Your imagination generates more than mere mental images. Its reach extends through your entire sensorium. Simultaneously, visual and kinesthetic imaginings carry an effective charge. They can excite your muscles, tissue, and fascia, heighten or alter your senses. You can fold semiosis into sensation. Perceptual experiments can re-articulate your sensorium. And by imagining otherwise and telling different stories, join the Sprouts Writing and Creativity Group and explore other stories. We want you. Drop-ins welcome. You can open up new sensible worlds. If that doesn't work, let the plants work directly on you. Cannabis and ayahuasca have been great allies for those seeking to palpate the sentience of the more than human world. But above all, involve yourself with plant life. Make space for plants to take root and take time to watch them grow. Linger among them. Let their sentiences and sensibilities alter your perception, how you think, how and what you know. So far, the not so hard part doesn't seem extremely accurate for us. I think these are actually kind of easy, right? I think they're also super interesting, by the way. All right, take step 8. Take ecology off the grid. Once you have decolonized your imagination and vegetalized your sensorium, the world will look and feel a lot different. You may begin to sense things you have never perceived before. You may get the feeling that you're being watched everywhere you go. Indeed, the plants and trees are not indifferent to you. They are paying very close attention to all beings that ingather around them. Who uses ingather in a phrase? Ingather. Ingather. They know how to lure you and their other co-conspirators with force. Start with plants. Follow their inquisitive growth, their running roots and rhizomes, the widespread movements of their pollen and seeds, and an entire ecology of beings and becomings and comings undone will soon become perceptible. Get caught up in the involutionary momentum that propels these beings into one another's lives, and you will soon start to perceive the effective ecologies taking shape among the thicket of relations around you. Cultivate modes of attention and allow you to perceive what matters to the plants and their co-conspirators. Becoming sensor. Tune into this ecology of practices and practitioners. Follow the push and pull, the attractions and repulsions, the happenings taking shape in and around the plants. Get a feel for the way that plants practice their arts at the cusp of life and death. With time, you will begin to detune your colonial ecological sensorium, and new worlds will open up into view. Okay, so Lori is correcting me, and she has a much wider vocabulary than I do. She uses ingather all the time. I admire you, Lori. Always have for when it comes to vocabulary. My vocabulary is quite small. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Develop protocols for an ungridable ecology, a mode of inquiry that refuses the colonization, militarism, heteronormativity, and economization of life, that grounds conventional ecology, resists desires for legibility and statistical generalizability. I'm practicing my mouth, I am working my jaw, which is great because it's like exercising my face as I say this. It's awesome. Refuse attempts to calculate an ecology's energetic efficiencies or apply cost-benefit analysis. Invalidate metrics that would parse ecological relations into mechanical parts. Break all automatic prefabricated sensors. I have always wondered, I have to admit, that or maybe I can say it really bothers me when people think about how ecological they are based on what their electrical bill is. Like, I turn off pretty much everything. I unplug everything before I go to bed. I have very few things plugged in. I probably just the absolute basics. As a matter of fact, my nightstand doesn't even have, it has a rechargeable, it has a little tiny lamp that has rechargeable batteries in it. But I don't do it because of my cost. I do it because I feel like, what is the point of pulling electricity when I don't need it? Like, it's just a mentality that doesn't make a lot of sense for me. It doesn't mean I do everything, because I try my best, but it's hard. But I pretty much have everything unplugged. Not for cost benefit, but because. Over time, you will begin to forget what you used to think nature was, and you will forget how you used to think life worked. And eventually you will forget too the naturalizing tropes that made you believe that living beings work like machines, or that forests perform ecosystem services, or that reproduction and fitness were the only valuable and recordable measures of a life. Oh, this is such a good one that she just hit. Oh, that one resonates. The whole idea that everything, that like Darwinism, and in this part, Darwinism drives me nuts. The entire thing, that evolution is all about reproduction and fitness, and like that, or that reproduction is fitness, and that everything we do is for reproduction. Like, bothers me so much. Where confront the colonial and capitalist desires of the ecological sciences. Say no to conventional ecologicals extracting metrics that justify an extractive ecology indebted to expansion and dispossession. Beware of Anthropocene ecologies that reduce land care practices to resource management. Do ecology otherwise. Decolonizing ecology means restoring indigenous stewardship to stolen. I don't even like stewardship, because even stewardship implies I take care of something else because it can't take care of itself. Maybe I'm just using the wrong word. I just feel like it's like indigenous partnership. Isn't it a partnership between the land and all the beings of the land and the humans, which are beings of the land? Exactly. It implies control. The idea of stewardship to me implies control. I don't want stewardship. I understand Robin Wall Kimmerer, and I understand that these are the steps that we have to take, and we're taking steps to move back into this, and that at least as stewards, I'm somewhat taking care, but I don't need to take care of the land. I need to take care of myself. And because the land is a part of me, I take care of all of it, but I don't do it as if you can't take care of yourself. I do it in partnership with you. I don't know. It's just weird. It's just weird to me. In the Planthroposcene, colonial governments must cede control over land management and make space for indigenous peoples to bring ceremony and healing to their lands and bodies. The raging fires currently incinerating Australia and California are a direct result of colonial dispossession and the suppression of indigenous fire practices. Indigenous knowledge keepers have the know-how to conspire with fire. See, conspire in this case, I get, and I like that better than stewardship. Conspire with fire to grow livable and nourishing worlds. The remnant oak savannas in California and around the Great Lakes, for example, were made over millennia by indigenous people bringing fire to lands and plant communities that thrive on fire. And we know they thrive on fire because some of the plants can only propagate through fire. So we know that fire is an essential and important piece of it. And it's about the relationship to know when to start, when not. All of these types of things that, traditional land resource management doesn't do. Indigenous land stewardship is a form of harm reduction and climate action. These are the plant people conspiracies that will save us. All right, step 9. Garden against Eden. Forget everything you thought a garden was. Aho! I am all for this. And everything you thought a gardener was supposed to do. I am with this. I like feral gardening, as what was it Michelle said earlier in her comment. Feral gardening. I'm good. Your job in the Planthropocene is to stage plant people conspiracies to keep this planet livable and breathable. Your primary commitment will be to support plant growth everywhere. Start by letting the plants grow where they want to. Actually, as a matter of fact, I have a geranium on my balcony. Super cute. And there's something growing behind the geranium. I'm sure somebody else would probably think of it as a weed that needs to move. I don't actually know. And I am a great example of the fact that tomato is still growing and putting out tomatoes when I don't eat tomatoes. I do have one tomato ready to eat. I gave the others away so far, but I do have one tomato ready to eat. Start by letting plants grow where they want to. Let them break through the concrete, root into every fissure and surface, grow through the holes in every sense. All right, let's not exaggerate a little too much. Don't be afraid of the plants. Remember, those plants we vilify as invasive species are here to teach us about the ravages of colonialism. The plants themselves are not evil. They grow where lands have been destroyed. They grow on sites of dispossession. They grow where lands and bodies are out of relation. Before we poison the earth with pesticides to eradicate non-native plants, we need to ask ourselves, what are they up to? And this is something I encourage. Didn't we have this conversation in NCC with Tanya? We have to ask Tanya what she did with, because Tanya had the tree of heaven, the alios. Oh my goodness, we need to find out what came up with that, because we're so curious as to what came up with that. I'm so curious. What are they teaching us about colonization and the ruins of capitalism? The Planthropocene uproots the infrastructure of anthropocentric cities founded on Edenic desires of a nature tamed and contained by man. Give those old order infrastructures back to the plants and the fungi, let them decompose. Wild urban plant growth certainly does portend the decline of empire, but in the Planthropocene, wild growth will not be read as a sign of ruin. Planthropocentric cities will be designed to support plant life everywhere. Each surface will offer an affordance, a place for plants to root and grow and decompose. Perhaps one day you will conspire with the plants to grow. I hate that she uses the plants. It's the only thing, Natasha, that's really bothering me. You will conspire with plants to grow your own home. There was a huge project on that. I haven't heard about that in a few years, but there used to be a really big momentum towards the idea of growing your own home. And I have to go look into that. It was really interesting. I mean, of course, it's slow, but it was really interesting. Perhaps cities will grow themselves into cooling forests, brimming with nourishment. What is it called? Oh, I need to look it up. Why is it not coming into my head? It's not Biophilic Effect. That is a different book. I'll find it. There is one book I'm thinking of right now that talks a lot about this. It's on our list for the book club, but we haven't voted it into being, into reading, but I'll find it. In the Planthropocene, radical farmers like those at the Land Institute in Kansas will have succeeded in dismantling industrial agriculture by conspiring with the plants to bring back the plains, growing perennial grains in the form of regenerating grasslands. These lands will demand the return of the buffalo. They will resist erosion, retain water, activate soil microbes, and reject heavy machinery and chemical fertilizers. As such, they will set the stage for new kinds of social and political relations. In the Planthropocene, the capitalist imperative to grow economies will be subverted and supplanted by the imperative to give plants the time and space they need to grow, to freely articulate relations with their allies and express their fullest desires. Humans will have to cede their biopolitical powers over lands and bodies. We will no longer be in control. I'm ready. I am so ready. I am so ready. Step 10, make art for the Planthropocene. Refuse the aesthetics. Refuse the aesthetics of ruin porn, which constrains our imaginations about wild growth to sites of cultural decay, as if it is the only in the wake of human extinction that plants will be able to express their full, unfettered, read monstrous powers. No, I want to express my full powers, and I want plants to express all of their full power. I want us all to express our full powers. Seriously, that's what I want. Cultivate instead a taste for Planthropocene porn. I have a lot of tree porn and plant porn I have a lot of plant porn on my phone, so I understand this. Art that keeps people in the game by staging intimate relations between plants and, I think she meant human when she says people there, and humans. Art that figures nature as lover, not mother. Art that lures us into the realm of more than human pleasures. Curate your own ecosexual bathhouse. That's a really interesting project, by the way. And make love with the plants. Very interesting. Join Slovenian artist Špela Petric and the Plant Sex Consultancy to design vibrators for lonely potted plants and flowers that have lost their pollinators. Sign me up. Yeah. Activate your own capacity for cosmic mattering by learning Chimeras Rosas protocols to tattoo your skin with chlorophyll. Okay, this is one I don't know. This one is one I don't know. No, I have to admit I'm curious. Sorry, I had to take a detour. We're almost at the end and I'm taking a detour. Have you heard about this? I had not heard about this. This is somewhat embarrassing, but it's not there. Something about it happened. All right, I'll look for it. I will look for it. You too can learn how to photosynthesize. Join artists from Dance for Plants to create performances for the potted plants that are slow dancing on the window ledges of your apartment. Apprentice with Mexican artist Gilberto Esparza to design lively nomadic plant companions. Build the bodies of your planimal machines. Planimal machines from electronic waste harvested from the ruins of capitalism and engineer them to draw their energy from bacterial life. I love the way her mind works. I love the way her mind works. So that when they suck up raw sewage downstream from toxic industrial flows, they can transform it into water that supports plants and their allies. Whatever you do, conspire with plants to make art like your life depends on disrupting the colonial common sense that would leave us all to die in the Anthropocene. Seriously, it's so good. It's so good. So good. At least for me, this is so good. I mean, what do you think? Was it as good for you as it was for me? Because it was good. It was good for me. So this is the opinion piece by Natasha Myers. Yes, see? Thank you, Jill. Yes. How to Grow Livable Worlds 10. I think pretty easy, at least in my mentality, is pretty easy steps for life in the Planthropocene, but maybe it's not so easy for everybody else. What do you think? I want to know your thoughts on this paper. It is just, I mean, it's not a paper, it's an opinion piece. You could tell, again, I think it's a 3 o'clock in the morning ranty piece, but that's what I love about it. I feel like she really didn't hold back where her other was really about, like, all of her other work has always had a bit of a slant. You can always tell her opinion on things, but I feel like she's tried to hold back for publication because this is an opinion piece. She's like, you know what? I'm just gonna let it all hang out. I'm up. It's the middle of the night. I'm pissed off. I want to just get this done. And I love it. I love it. I think we're here for all of the snark. So I am so curious as to what your thoughts. Please make sure that you leave a comment. I will post all of the relevant information. She lives in Toronto. She is a professor at York University. And so Natasha Myers lives in Toronto. Actually, it's here on the bottom, her information. Where is it? Hold on a second. Where's my share? Window, there we go. So Natasha Myers is an associate professor in the Department of Anthropology at York University in Toronto. And she has Twitter and Instagram. She doesn't really post very often, I'll be honest. But yeah, she has several pieces. We've already reviewed one up on plant sensing. You can see it in the postings that I have here in the commentary. And then she also has one more paper that I have queued up at some point to talk about, because it's another one that's just so good. So good. Plus, if you did I Am Plant, you also saw some of her writing there, because I included it into it because I felt like it was really appropriate for the work that we were doing. She really is, one of the things that I love about her is, first of all, I mean, she is obviously very plant focused, but at the same time, she gives homage to all of the photosynthetic ones. And I feel like she really is encouraging us to break down all these barriers, which a lot of people do not do. I think a lot of people think we could just substitute out colonialism or some of the extractive tendencies, or some people just don't even see that those are a problem. I like the fact that she's like, we have to step into the unknown. She's one of the few, especially in the academic world, that is being super clear about the idea that we have to step into the unknown. And being a former dancer herself, or a current dancer herself, the arts, as we talk about so often here in the naturally conscious community, is a mechanism for you to step into that unknown. So she really encourages the idea of the arts. And this is one of the things that I love about her, because we know, we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about it when we've looked at things from Prudence Gibson. We've talked about it from a few other sources, where we need that suspension of disbelief. We need that imagination. We need to really, even our own subtle body of imagination, right? That layer of our aura is pretty, quote unquote, depressed, in the sense of has been almost turned off. So we need to reawaken all these parts of ourselves, because in those places is where our true full humanness and plantness and all otherness resides. It is in that subtle layer of imagination. It is in all those extra senses that we have turned off. It is in all these other pieces of our sense of dreaming, our sense of the divine. It is inside of all these pieces that the parts of ourselves that are more collaborative, as we already know, there are missing archetypes in our world paradigm. And those missing archetypes are all about relations and relationships, and how do I relate, the sense of love, all these other pieces. And therefore we need these stories, we need this art, we need all these other experiences in order to be able to access them today, because they're missing. And we also need to ask plants directly, because when we speak with plants directly, we have the opportunity to connect into that. But we need to prime ourselves first. So all of this artistic work is not just an interpretation, which is one piece of it, a way for us to interpret and understand things that our mind today is not able to handle. But another very big part of this is to prime ourselves for the information that we will be receiving, or that we are receiving. We need to clear away that common sense buffer, the conditioning buffer, the limiting beliefs buffer, all of these different limits that we have put on ourselves, or that have been implied on ourselves. They have been placed on ourselves. We need to break these all down in order for us to be ready to truly receive what the plants have to offer and what other species have to offer. Again, we are focusing here, we focus on plants because they're so, kin are so close to us. It makes it easier. But from there, we're going to keep going, right? We're going to go into the nature spirits and into the bacteria and into the fungi and into everything else. Plants just they're the closest world to us. So we have that easy access, and we want to have them both be our partners in this, as well as we need to prepare ourselves. It's kind of like almost doing a cleanse for your body. We're doing a cleanse of all of these limits that we have on our human form, because the human is not limited in that way. It's just something that has been, who knows how. There's so many different, I can give you mythologies that tell you why it happened, but in the end result, we are where we are today. And if we're going to break down so many of the aspects that she talks about in this opinion piece, we need to prep. We need to prep, and the arts is a great way for us to really push the limits of everything that we are and to expand our senses. And working with the plants, I feel like we're going to get there, man. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. I am not a apocalyptic person. I think we as humans can do it. I can't say we're all going to do it, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it. All right. I hope you really enjoyed this opinion piece as much as I do. So, and I am, now I'm all like riled up. I'm super, super excited about this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, when you view this, please, leave a comment, come into the Naturally Conscious community and share your thoughts, ideas, start a new post. This is the space for you. This is your safe space to explore your rantiness on these topics, to really start to disassemble what is all of this mechanistic science and colonialization and patriarchy and all these other pieces, and to see what the possibilities are, what lays ahead for us, and where can we evolve into. So that's it for this week's Plant Consciousness live stream. All of our commentary. I am so grateful to have you here. And always remember, resist the urge to hold back your evolving green brilliance. That's it for me, Tigria Gardenia. Bye.